Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to strongly support the motion before us to amend the Act that we are considering today. Mr. Speaker, say effectively it is repealing the changes enforced through what was notoriously known as Bill number 17. On 30th July 2021, we can remember all too well the passage of the notorious Bill 17, lesser known as the iTaukei Land Trust Budget Amendment Act 2021, and how it was passed in Parliament by the then government, of course now in the opposition. They, Mr. Speaker, railroaded this amendment under Standing Order 51 with no consultation whatsoever with the ex-primary stakeholders who are our iTaukei customary land owners. How could we forget, Mr. Speaker, yet another dark stain of draconian political intimidation and persecution of dissenting voices, such as many of ours now sitting on this side of the House, when we were held up by the CID police for repeated questioning. The Honourable Prime Minister was taken in as well about this law when we made public our statements against it. The bill was tabled in Parliament. As members of Parliament, we had the right to talk about that bill. But we were held up by the police during COVID, curfew hours, and repeatedly questioned, not once, in my case 4 times, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, how could we ever forget those moments when it became clear to the nation that the parliamentary privilege and our views on Bill 17 as elected representatives of the people were meaningless to the opposition side now, and all those who were enabling that to happen. Basically, those who were drunk on power at that time. If we look back to the Hansard of the debate that occurred on Friday, 30th July 2021, Mr. Speaker said, the justification from the other side fooled no one, least of all the people of Fiji. The other side who were there that day all said, Mr. Speaker, in many different ways, I remember that very vividly, that the intention of the law change was to improve business efficiency by eliminating delays in getting TLDB consent for mortgages. And we were just told by both the Honourable Minister for iTaukei Affairs and the Land and Attorney General that even the banks don't oppose this bill. Because I know, Mr. Speaker, we consulted with a number of lawyers when we were debating this bill at that time. And many of them told us that in fact the iTaukei Land Trust Board was actually more efficient than the Lands Department in terms of facilitating the consent for mortgages and other things. Yet they arrogantly and disrespectfully trust any opportunity for process of consultation with owners of the asset, which the TLTB is merely a custodian of. The other side, Mr. Speaker, alluded to slow TLTB consent processes. Yet the former Prime Minister, who was the chair of TLTB, had every opportunity since 2015 to reform TLTB business processes to minimize administrative hurdles that were slow and cumbersome. And I'm sure that the TLTB would be paying attention to this particular issue. In our opposition to the amendment of all of us on this side who were there, Mr. Speaker, we were heaped with scorn, ridicule, allegations of racial rhetoric. Yet now that we sit on this side, we are in a position to know that the marketing push for this law change was perhaps not as glossy as they made the sales pitch for, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker said today, I have the utmost joy in supporting the motion to repeal the amendment to the Act and fully endorse the revision to the law as it was in June 2021 before the Fiji First Government tinkered with it, and it sealed its fate at the 2022 polls because of the arrogance in taking away liberties that were not theirs to take. Mr. Speaker, when the 1940 iTaukei Land Trust Act was enacted, it was on the basis of three founding pillars, Mr. Speaker said. One was consultation. Consultations with land-owning units throughout the length and breadth of the Fiji Islands. The second pillar, Mr. Speaker, was confidence. With consultations, Ratu Selala Sukuna, an embodiment of wisdom and chiefly authority, gained the confidence of the landowners of creating the idea of a board to administer the land. The third, Mr. Speaker, was trust. With confidence, gained the landowners, gave their trust and consent to the enactment to establish the board which has served them to the present day. And very aptly spoken by Ratu Selala Sukuna, and I quote, and this is what he said, Mr. Speaker: "These are acts of trust unmatched in our time," unquote. We ought to take a lesson from this historical process of consultation, Mr. Speaker said, to confer with landowners and assure them that their trust is not being undermined. This must be done at all times, but consultation, Mr. Speaker, as we know, you know, sir, was not the style of the Fiji First Government. The amendments were rushed through Parliament in July 2021. Mr. Speaker, it was an act of arrogance and utmost disrespect of the worst kind. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude, let me say this. Ever since independence, all governments and all political parties have respected the primacy of land rights for Fiji's indigenous people. Mr. Speaker, the National Federation Party and its respected leaders of the past, the party began in the 1960s, Mr. Speaker said, as a party representing tenant farmers. We have always respected the rights of indigenous people to their land. And through dialogue and consultation, Mr. Speaker, we've had a history of stability and economic prosperity through that consultation and dialogue. We have also always, Mr. Speaker, recognized that matters concerning iTaukei land are matters for the iTaukei. We agree that any changes to laws affecting iTaukei land should be widely consulted on and decided on by the iTaukei landowners. I strongly support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Leader of